The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the heart of neutral space, far from any star or planet. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform. Each seat belonged to a different species. Each species had fought wars, built empires, and conquered stars to earn their place here. On this morning, the hall was full. Representatives from 100 worlds spoke in low voices. Their translators hummed with the sound of a dozen languages. The session was about to begin. Ambassador Thelvos of the Valari Empire adjusted his robes and looked around the chamber. His people had ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. They were the oldest, the wisest, the most powerful. Every other species knew their place beneath the Valari. His eyes moved to the human section. The seats were empty. Tel smiled. Humans were always late, always disorganized. They had joined the assembly 300 years ago, and in all that time, they had never mattered. They were the youngest species, the weakest. Their technology was primitive. Their military was small. They had no great empire and no ancient history. The galaxy tolerated them the way one might tolerate a child who wandered into an adult conversation. The session began. Chancellor Morvith, a tall creature with gray skin and 6 eyes, stood at the central platform. He called for order. The hall fell silent. "We begin today's session," Morvith announced. "First matter, trade routes through the Calori sector." Calori representative stood to speak. But before he could say a word, someone interrupted. "Where are the humans?" The question came from a young Valari diplomat. She was looking at the empty seats with confusion on her face. Thelvos laughed. Perhaps they finally realized they do not belong here. The hall erupted in laughter. Even Chancellor Morveth allowed himself a small smile, but the young diplomat did not laugh. "No," she said slowly. "I mean, where are all of them? I spoke with their representative yesterday. Minho Lee, he said nothing about leaving." The laughter faded. Others began to look at the empty seats. 20 chairs. All empty. Not one human in the entire chamber. "Contact their embassy," Morvith ordered. A technician pressed buttons on a console. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The technician looked up with wide eyes. There is no response. "The embassy is... dark." "What do you mean, dark?" "No power. No signals. Nothing." Thelvos felt the first cold touch of unease. "Try their homeworld. Try Earth." The technician worked quickly. The great screen above the platform flickered to life, showing a map of the galaxy. A line of light stretched toward the Sol system, humanity's home. The line hit something and stopped. "I cannot reach them," the technician said. "There is some kind of barrier around their entire star system. Energy readings are... impossible. Nothing can get through." The hall was silent now. No one laughed. Over the next several hours, reports came in from across the galaxy. Every human was gone. Not just the diplomats. All of them. Human traders had abandoned their ships. Human workers had left their stations. Human soldiers had vanished from joint military bases. Human colonists had emptied their settlements. Millions of humans. Gone in a single night, and not one of them had said goodbye. Investigator Thelvos was assigned to find answers. He started at the human embassy on Station Kareth. The doors were unlocked. The lights were off. Inside, everything was clean and organized. Personal items had been removed. Computer systems had been wiped. It was not the scene of a panic or an emergency. It was the scene of a careful, planned departure in the office of Dr. Una Park. The chief xenodiplomat, Thelvos, found something strange. A piece of paper sat on her desk. Real paper, made from trees. Humans were sentimental about such things. On the paper were words written in an ancient Earth language. No translator could read it. Thelvos took a picture and sent it to language experts across the galaxy. 3 days later, he received the translation.
Oh.
"You should have listened." Thelvos stared at those 4 words for a long time. He thought about all the times humans had spoken in the assembly. They had proposed trade agreements. They had asked for military partnerships. They had requested seats on important councils. Every time they had been refused, every time they had been told to wait, to be patient, to know their place. And every time they had smiled and nodded and said, "We understand." What had they understood? The Galactic Assembly met again 1 week after the disappearance. Chancellor Morvith stood at the platform and addressed the gathered representatives. "The human situation is concerning, but not critical," he announced. "They have clearly chosen isolation. This is their right. We will continue without them," the hall murmured in agreement. Humans had never contributed much anyway. Their absence would change nothing. Thelvo sat in his seat and said nothing. He could not shake the feeling that they were all missing something. Something important. He thought about Min-Ho Lee, the human representative he had spoken to many times. Lee had always been calm, polite, patient, even when Thelvos had insulted him. Even when other representatives had laughed at human proposals. Lee had simply smiled and made notes on his datapad. What had he been writing? Thelvos requested access to Lee's quarters. They had been emptied like all the others. But in a hidden compartment behind a wall panel, he found something, a small device, human-made. When he activated it, a hologram appeared. It was Min-Ho Lee. He was not smiling. "If you're watching this," Lee said, "then we are gone. You are probably confused, perhaps angry. Perhaps you think we have surrendered or retreated." He paused. "You are wrong." The hologram flickered. "For 300 years, we asked for respect. You gave us contempt. We asked for equality. You gave us silence. We asked for partnership. You laughed." Lee's eyes were cold. "So we stopped asking. And we started preparing." The hologram faded. Thelvo sat alone in the empty room. His hands were shaking. Preparing. Preparing for what? Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere beyond them, behind a barrier that nothing could break. Humanity waited, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. 6 months passed. The galaxy moved on. Trade continued. Wars were fought and ended. The Galactic Assembly held its meetings. Humans became a strange footnote in history. A species that had simply walked away. Then the jump gates began to fail. The first failure happened in the Kalori sector. A military fleet of 200 warships entered the gate at full speed. They never came out the other side. The gate simply stopped working. 200 ships and 15,000 soldiers lost in an instant. Engineers rushed to investigate. What they found made no sense. The gate's core systems had shut down. Not broken. Not damaged. Shut down. As if someone had simply turned off a switch. Deep inside the gate's machinery, they found the switch. A small device no bigger than a hand. Human writing covered its surface. "This is impossible," the chief engineer said. "This gate was built by the Volari 1,000 years ago. Humans did not exist in space 1,000 years ago. But the device was there. And when they searched other gates, they found more devices. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Hidden in places no one had thought to look. The Jump Gate network, the very foundation of galactic civilization, was filled with human technology. Investigator Thelvos was given a new assignment. Find out how this happened. Find out what the humans had done. He started with the records. For 300 years, humans had worked across the galaxy. They had taken jobs that other species considered beneath them. Maintenance workers, technicians, cleaners, they had worked on stations, ships, and colonies belonging to every major power. They had been everywhere. Thelvos found the personnel file of a human named Siwu Beak. He had worked as a maintenance technician on Station Volari Prime for 40 years. His supervisors had described him as quiet, hardworking, and forgettable. He had fixed pipes and cleaned filters. Nothing important. But when Thelvos checked the station's systems, he found Siwu Beak's fingerprints everywhere. Small modifications. Tiny additions. Things that no one had noticed because no one had bothered to look. Station Volari. Prime's life support system now depended on human-designed components. If those components failed, 50 million Volari would die. The same pattern repeated across the galaxy. Human workers had spent 3 centuries quietly modifying every system they touched. Power grids, communication networks, water purification plants, financial systems, military defense networks. Everything depended on human technology. And that technology was beginning to fail. The failures were not random. They followed a pattern. First, the military systems. Then, the communication networks. Then, the financial systems. Each failure was precisely timed to cause maximum chaos. The Calorie Dominion lost contact with its outer colonies. Without communication, local governors declared independence. Civil war erupted within weeks. The Volari Empire's economy collapsed when its banking systems froze. Credits became worthless. Riots broke out on 100 worlds. The Assembly demanded answers. Thelvos stood before them with his report. The humans did not run away, he said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. They did not surrender. They did not give up. He paused. They prepared. For 300 years, they placed themselves in positions we considered unimportant. They took jobs we thought were beneath us. They smiled when we insulted them. They nodded when we dismissed them. And while we ignored them, they rebuilt our entire civilization from the inside. The hall was silent. Everything we have, Thelvos continued, depends on systems they designed. Systems they control. Systems they are now shutting down, one by one. Chancellor Morveth rose from his seat. This is an act of war, Delvo said quietly. This is the result of a war. A war they declared 300 years ago. A war we never knew we were fighting. He looked around the chamber. In a war we have already lost. The assembly erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted accusations at each other. Who had allowed this? Who had failed to notice? Who was responsible? No one had an answer. Thelvos returned to his investigation. He found more recordings, more hidden files. One of them belonged to a human intelligence officer named Hagen Co. The file had been encrypted, but the encryption key had been left behind deliberately. The humans wanted someone to find this. Thelvos played the recording. Hagen Co. appeared on the screen. He was a thin man with tired eyes. He sat in a small room, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. My name is Hagen Co., he said. I am a senior analyst for Earth Intelligence. If you are watching this, then Operation Quiet Storm has begun. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You probably have questions. Let me answer some of them. He leaned forward. Do you think you know us? You think we are weak, primitive, young? Shook his head. You are wrong. We are none of those things. We are patient. We are careful. We plan ahead. Not for years. Not for decades. For centuries, the recording flickered. When we joined your assembly, we had hope. We thought we could be partners, equals, friends. Hagen's voice hardened. You showed us what you really thought of us. You showed us that we would never be accepted, never be respected, never be equals. He stood up. So we made a choice. If we could not join your civilization as partners, we would become something else. Something you never expected. Something you never saw coming. He walked toward the camera. We became the foundation. The infrastructure. The invisible systems that keep everything running. He smiled again. And now, we are pulling out those foundations. One by one, piece by piece. Until everything you built comes crashing down. The recording ended. Thelvos sat in darkness. Around him, the lights flickered. Somewhere in the station, another human system was failing. He thought about all the humans he had met over the years. The servants, the workers. The diplomats who smiled and nodded and wrote notes on their datapads. They had been watching, learning, waiting, and now they were gone. And they had taken everything with them. The galaxy was falling apart. and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. 1 year after the humans disappeared, the Galactic Assembly made a decision. They would not wait any longer. They would not negotiate. They would not beg. They would attack. Chancellor Morvith stood before the gathered representatives. His voice was strong, but everyone could see the fear in his 6 eyes. "The humans have declared war on all of us," he announced. "They have attacked our infrastructure. They have destroyed our economies. They have killed millions through their sabotage." He raised his fist. "We will not stand for this. We will break their barrier. We will enter their system, and we will make them pay for what they have done." The hall erupted in cheers. Finally, action. Finally, revenge. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of human space. 10,000 warships from every major power. Valari dreadnoughts, Colliery destroyers, Theran battle cruisers. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Velkith of the Valari commanded the fleet. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the energy barrier surrounding the Sol system. "Today," he said to his officers, "we end the human threat forever." The fleet advanced. The barrier shimmered and pulsed with strange energy. Weapons charged. Shields activated. 10,000 ships prepared for war. Then, without warning, the barrier fell. It simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Admiral Velkith hesitated. This was too easy. But the pressure from home was too great. The galaxy wanted blood. He gave the order to advance. The fleet entered the Sol system. They passed Mars. They approached Earth. Both planets were empty. No cities. No structures. No life. The surfaces had been stripped clean. Not destroyed. Removed. Every building, every vehicle, every piece of technology, gone. "Where are they?" Admiral Velkith demanded. Before anyone could answer, the ships began to explode. It started at the edges of the fleet. Destroyers vanished in balls of fire. Cruisers broke apart. The attacks came from everywhere and nowhere. Automated weapons platforms appeared from hidden positions in the asteroid belt. Satellites that had seemed dead suddenly activated. Mines that had drifted for years exploded against hulls. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a trap. Admiral Velkith screamed orders. "Return fire. Retreat. Do something." But there was nothing to fire at. The weapons were automated. The platforms were unmanned. There were no human ships. No human soldiers. No one to fight. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 10,000 ships had been reduced to floating debris. Millions of soldiers from a dozen species were dead, and not a single human had been present. Admiral Velkith survived. His flagship was damaged but functional. As he drifted through the wreckage of his fleet, signal reached his communication systems. A hologram appeared on his bridge. She was a human woman. Her uniform was crisp and clean. Her face was calm. A name tag on her chest read, "Captain Young-Ji Han." "Admiral Velkith," she said. "I hope you are watching this. I hope you survived. Because someone needs to carry our message back to the galaxy." Velkith stared at the hologram with hatred in his eyes. "You call this primitive," Young-Ji Han continued. "You excluded us from your councils. You laughed when we spoke. You dismissed our ideas. You treated us like children." She paused. "But you never asked what we were doing in the silence. You never wondered why we smiled when you mocked us. You never thought to question why we accepted every insult without complaint." The hologram flickered. We were not weak. We were not afraid. We were waiting, preparing, planning." Her eyes were cold. "This is not revenge, Admiral. Revenge is emotional. This is not emotional. This is calculation. This is the natural result of 300 years of careful planning." She stepped forward. "Go back to your assembly. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that their fleets are useless against us. Tell them that we have anticipated every attack, every strategy, every move they could make." She smiled. It was not a kind smile. and tell them this is only the beginning. The hologram faded. Across the galaxy, the same message played. Every species received it. Every world watched Captain Yun Jihan deliver humanity's declaration. But that was not all they found. In the ruins of human colonies, in abandoned research stations, in hidden data vaults, investigators discovered the writings of a man named Doyen Choi. He had been a philosopher, a strategist, a teacher. His students had become the architects of humanity's plan. His most famous writing was called The Definition of War. Thelvos read it in his quarters on a dying station. The words burned into his mind. War is not declared with words, Doyen Choi had written. Words are meaningless. Words can be ignored. War is declared with action. By the time your enemy realizes you have declared war, you should already have one. Every moment of peace should be used to prepare for war. Every smile should hide a plan. Every handshake should gather information. When the war finally becomes visible, it should already be over. Thelvos set down the document. His hands were trembling. Chancellor Morvith called an emergency session of the assembly. The hall was half empty. Many representatives had fled. Others had died when their ships failed or their planets fell into chaos. When did they declare war on us? Morvith asked. His voice was broken. His confidence was gone. Thelvos stood to answer. He thought about everything he had learned. The centuries of preparation, the hidden technology, the patient smiles. 300 years ago, he said. The day they joined us, they declared war on us the moment they realized we would never accept them as equals. The hall was silent. We just did not notice. Thelvos continued, because we were too busy laughing at them. No one laughed now. 18 months after the humans disappeared. The galaxy was broken. The Galactic Assembly no longer existed. Its great hall drifted in space, empty and dark. The species that had once gathered there were now fighting each other. Old alliances had shattered. Old enemies had become desperate friends. Everyone was trying to survive, and still the humans did not return. Thelvos had become something of an expert on humanity. He spent his days studying their history, their culture, their psychology. He was trying to understand how they had done it, how they had fooled everyone for 300 years. The answer, he discovered, was simple. They had been underestimated from the beginning. When humans first appeared in the galaxy, they were primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. Their technology was centuries behind the other species. The galaxy had looked at them and seen nothing worth respecting. That was the first mistake. Humans learned fast. They adapted. They improved. But they did not show their improvements. They kept their best technology hidden. They let the galaxy continue to believe they were weak. While other species built weapons, humans built networks. While other species conquered planets, humans made themselves useful. They took the jobs no one else wanted. They became the workers, the technicians, the servants. They spread across the galaxy like water spreading through cracks in stone. And in every crack, they left something behind. The Falls found the files of General Hyun-jung. He had been the commander of Earth's military for 60 years. But his true role was something else. He was the architect of Operation Quiet Storm. The operation had begun the day humanity joined the assembly. For 300 years, every human action had been part of the plan. Every diplomat who smiled at an insult, every worker who fixed a machine, every trader who mapped a hyperlane, every servant who listened at doorways, all of them were soldiers. All of them were fighting a war that no one else could see. General Hyun-jung's files included reports from thousands of operatives. One of them was a woman named Nari Kim. Nari Kim had spent 40 years as a servant in a Valari noble household. She had cleaned their rooms. She had served their food. She had listened to them laugh at humanity. She had smiled and nodded and said nothing. But every night she had written reports. She had mapped the family's connections. She had documented their weaknesses. She had recorded their secrets. When she finally left, she took everything with her. The Valari family never suspected. They barely remembered her name. There were thousands like Nari Kim, humans, who would sacrifice their lives for a mission they might never see completed. They had worked in silence. They had endured humiliation. They had waited for a day that might come after they were dead, and they had done it. Willingly, Delvos found a recording of a human school. It was a small building on a colony world. Children sat at desks, listening to their teacher. Today, the teacher said, "We will talk about patience." The children were young. Some were only 5 or 6 years old, but they listened with serious faces. Our grandparents planted the seeds, the teacher continued. Our parents watered them. We will tend them. And our children or our grandchildren will see the harvest. She looked at the children. This is our gift to the future. This is our duty to our people. Do you understand? The children nodded. Good, the teacher said. Now, let us practice. Smile. The children smiled. Bright, innocent smiles. The kind of smile that hid nothing. The kind of smile that made you trust. Delvos stopped the recording. He felt sick. They had trained their children. Not just soldiers. Not just spies. All of them. Every human child had been raised to understand the mission. To be patient. To sacrifice. To wait. He found an essay written by a child named Mina. Oh, she was 7 years old when she wrote it. My grandmother worked on a coal ore station, the essay read. She fixed their machines. They called her names. But she smiled and kept working. My mother works on a Valari ship. She cleans their rooms. They do not see her, but she sees everything. When I grow up, I will work too. I will smile and wait. And one day we will show them who we really are. 7 years old. Delvos set down the essay. He walked to his window and looked out at the stars. The Valari had ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built empires. They had conquered worlds. They had believed themselves the masters of all they saw, and they had been defeated by people who cleaned their floors and fixed their toilets, not because humans were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they were patient, because they could think in centuries instead of years, because they could sacrifice themselves for a future they would never see. The galaxy had treated them like insects, small, weak, unimportant. But insects could bring down giants, one bite at a time. Some species tried to surrender. They sent messages toward the Sol system. They begged for mercy. They offered anything the humans wanted. The messages disappeared into silence. No response. No acknowledgement. Nothing. The humans were not interested in surrender. They were not interested in negotiation. They had already won. Now they were simply waiting. Waiting for what? No one knew. Delvos found an old Valari elder sitting in the ruins of a great city. The elder had once been powerful. He had commanded fleets and ruled worlds. Now he sat in the dust, staring at nothing. Remember, the elder said when Delvos approached. I remember a human diplomat. 30 years ago. He came to me with a proposal. Trade, partnership, friendship. The elder laughed bitterly. I spat on him. I told him his species was nothing. I told him to go back to his dirty little planet and stay there. He looked up at Delvos, smiled at me. He thanked me for my time. He left without anger. The elder's voice broke. I thought I had one. I thought I had shown him his place. Tears ran down his face. But he was the one who won. He walked out of my palace with everything he needed, and I did not even notice. The elder buried his face in his hands. We thought we were the masters, he whispered. We were the test subjects. We were the experiment. And we failed. Delvos left the elder alone with his grief. There was nothing to say. Nothing that could undo 300 years of arrogance. The galaxy had laughed at humanity now. Humanity had the last laugh, and they had not even needed to be present to enjoy it. 3 years after the humans disappeared, the barrier around the Sol system fell for the second time, but this time no one attacked. There was no one left to attack. The great fleets were gone. The mighty empires were broken. The galaxy waited in fear and silence. Then the human ships emerged. Thelvos watched from a damaged station near the edge of Valari space. His screens showed the human fleet as it left the Sol system and spread across the galaxy. He counted the ships. Then he stopped counting. There were too many, but it was not the number that made him afraid. It was the ships themselves. 300 years ago, human ships had been primitive, slow, weak. The galaxy had laughed at their clumsy designs and simple weapons. These ships were different. They were sleek and beautiful and terrible. They moved through space like predators. Their weapons glowed with energy that sensors could not identify. Their shields shimmered with technologies that should not have existed. While humanity had hidden behind their barrier, they had not been idle. They had built, they had invented, they had advanced. 300 years of progress hidden from the galaxy. 300 years of secrets. And now those secrets were revealed. Supreme Commander Tai Ho Kong led the fleet. He was old now, but his eyes were sharp and his mind was clear. He had been a young admiral when humanity disappeared. He had commanded the evacuation of Earth. He had watched his people leave everything behind. Now was bringing them home. His flagship, the Sol, was the largest warship ever built. It dwarfed the Valari dreadnoughts that had once seemed so powerful. As it moved through the galaxy, species that had once mocked humanity now fled before it. Taiho did not chase them. There was no need. The war was already over. It had been over for years. This was simply the final chapter. He broadcast a message to the galaxy. His voice was calm. His words were simple. People of the galaxy, we have returned. For 300 years we asked for nothing but respect. You gave us contempt. We asked for partnership. You gave us servitude. We asked to be heard. You laughed and turned away, paused. So we stopped asking, and we started preparing. Now our preparation is complete. Our silence is over, and a new era begins. The message spread across every world. Every species heard it. Every leader trembled. On a broken space station, Chancellor Morvith received the message. He was no longer Chancellor of anything. The assembly was gone. His power was gone. He was just an old alien waiting to die. Then a human ship appeared beside his station. A shuttle detached and docked. The airlock opened. Ambassador Una Park stepped through. She had been the chief xenodiplomat 3 years ago. She had left the note on her desk, the note that said, "You should have listened." Now she was back. Morvith fell to his knees before her. He had no pride left, no dignity. "Only fear, please," he begged. "Have mercy. We were fools. We were arrogant. But please, do not destroy us." Una Park looked down at the kneeling Chancellor. Her face showed no anger, no satisfaction, only tired patience. "Stand up," she said. Morvith stood on shaking legs. "We did not come here for revenge," Una said. "Revenge is wasteful. We came here to build something new." She handed him a document. "These are our terms." Morvith read the document. His eyes widened. The terms were not harsh. There were no demands for territory, no calls for punishment, no requirements for tribute. Instead, the document outlined a new galactic order, a true assembly where all species would have equal voice, where no one would be dismissed or ignored, where the strong would not crush the weak. "I do not understand," Morvith whispered. "After everything we did to you, ... why?" Una Park looked out the window at the stars. "Because we remember what it felt like," she said. "We remember being small and weak and afraid. We remember being laughed at and dismissed. We remember the humiliation." She turned back to face him. "We do not want anyone else to feel that way. Not even you." Morvith stared at her. "You could rule us. You could enslave us. You could make us suffer as we made you suffer," Yasuna agreed. "We could, but that would make us like you." She shook her head. "We spent 300 years becoming something better. We will not waste that by becoming monsters." The reconstruction began. Human engineers repaired the systems they had broken. Human diplomats helped negotiate peace between warring species. Human ships patrolled the hyperlanes, protecting trade routes and preventing piracy. And everywhere they went, humans demanded the same thing: equality, not dominance, not submission. Simply the respect they had been denied for 3 centuries. Young Officer Jun Ho-shin stood on the bridge of his ship and watched a Valari colony receive food and medicine from a human transport. He was 25 years old. He had been born on a generation ship during the Exodus. He had grown up knowing nothing but the mission. His entire life had been preparation for this day. He felt no triumph, no joy, only a quiet sense of resolution. An older officer approached him. It was Admiral Taiho Kong, making his rounds through the fleet. "You seem troubled," Taiho said. Junho shook his head. "Not troubled, just ... thoughtful." He watched the Valari children receiving food from human hands. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth, about the old days, before we left. She said we would return someday, that we would prove ourselves." He paused. "She did not live to see it," Taiho nodded. "Many did not. They sacrificed their lives for a future they would never see. That is the human way. Was it worth it?" Duho asked. Taiho looked at the Valari children. Some of them were playing with human children from the transport, laughing together, sharing toys, seeing each other as friends, not enemies. "Yes," he said. "It was worth it." On a restored Earth, gardens bloomed again. Cities rose from the empty plains. Humans returned to the world their ancestors had left behind, and among them walked aliens. Valari and Kalori and Theron, former enemies, now guests. Their children played in human parks, ate human food, learned human games. Taiho Kong retired to a small house near the ocean. He spent his days watching the waves and thinking about the past. One afternoon, a young Valari child approached him. "Sir," the child asked, "why did your people wait so long? Why did you not fight back sooner?" Taiho smiled. It was a warm smile, a kind smile, the smile of a man who had finally found peace. "Because, little one," he said, "the strongest weapon is not a fleet or a bomb, it is patience. And we had centuries of it." The child thought about this. Then she smiled back. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "Will you teach me to be patient?" Taiho laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in years. He said, "I will teach you, but it will take a very long time." "That is okay," the child said. "I can wait." Taiho looked at her. A Valari child, asking a human for wisdom. 3 years ago, this would have been impossible. 300 years ago, it would have been unthinkable. But humans had learned something important during their long exile. The future was not built with weapons or wars. It was built with patience, sacrifice, and hope. And now, finally, the future they had dreamed of was here. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as humanity had planned.